So welcome back, my peeps. We're finally at the stage of plumbing in the coolant loop system of our hydronic heater. So we're gonna take all these parts and we're gonna fit them into this little section right here underneath our fridge. So we're gonna take it from looking like this right here to looking like this. Pretty easy, right? And I gotta say, that's probably the easiest video we've ever made during this whole DIY van build. Hope you enjoyed. Hit that subscribe. See you on the next video. No, what? You guys are still here? What, was that not enough detail for you or something? Alright, let me pull it back apart. I'll set the pieces up and I'll show you what I did. But I'm gonna be honest with you, I really don't feel like doing this today because, well, last night we got more snow than I think our city has seen in quite a few years in one drop. So this morning when I came outside, I actually had to push the door open to get out. Winston jumped out, we almost freaking lost him in the snow. And then to get down into the shelter, my goodness, the amount of snow. Winston almost never made it into the office today. Look at that wall of snow. Can you come in? Can you get down here? Go on. And of course, he's too lazy to shovel it, so I had to do that. And by the time I cleared all that snow out, I'm flipping exhausted. But we're gonna keep moving because, well, that's what Dares Drives does. So let's start with the parts that we're actually gonna be installing today. So the first piece is the expansion tank and or coolant reservoir. The next is the heat exchangers. This is what gives us the hot water. We have a pump that circulates the coolant through everything. Then we have the fan, which has a heat exchanger built into it. So the air blows into the heat exchanger, goes through there, heats up, and blows hot air into our van. So the first piece we're gonna review is the expansion tank itself, show you how we set it up, how we hook it up, and what it's all about, right after these messages. Now for this expansion tank, this is part of the kit that you'll buy from Rixon's Enterprises. It's made from a company called Comfort Hot. The build quality on it is absolutely phenomenal. It's all stainless steel, fully welded together, has a cap on top just like you have in the radiator of your car, and even on the back side of it, it has the brackets already welded on so you can mount 4 screws into whatever you're mounting this to. So the main purpose of this expansion tank is to have a reservoir to hold the majority of your coolant for the glycol loop system. But the other side, if you take this cap off, and if you can see down inside there, there are some coils in there, which are heater coils. Because if you look at the end of this, you will see that it hooks up to 115 volt AC power so that it can also heat your coolant instead of using the diesel heater all the time. But you are gonna wanna make sure you're hooked into shore power because this thing's like 1800 watts. So if you just run it off your batteries, you are gonna run into some battery issues because it'll drain them really fast. So we're just gonna unscrew the cover, remove the top, which will expose the 3 wires for our 115 volt AC power. And if you remember from a while back when we did our AC power pre-running of the wires, I'm gonna use more of that extension cable we bought, which is a 12 gauge stranded 3 wire, I don't see a word that has a nice protective coating over top of it. I'm just gonna wire this cord up into the end of that tank and match up the wires, white to white, black to black, and green to gray. And you'll see on the end of the cap, there is a nice easy diagram for you to follow, so we won't go too much into detail of that. But now we just tighten this end cap down, and we know our wire is held in there nice and tight, put our cap back on, and we're ready to move forward. And on the other side, we'll just hook up a 15 amp plug. As you'll see, we now got it coming out of the box. We got a long lead on it, and the plug. So now if we're hooked up to shore power, I can just plug this right into the wall, and this will now heat our glycol loop system, so we don't have to use the diesel heater. Of course, you do also have the option of wiring in just a switch, so you can turn it on and off. Myself, I decided on the plug. So with that all hooked up, now we move to the bottom where our fittings are and the drain. So for these 2 bottom fittings, you'll see one is marked in. That means the coolant should go in here and out this way to where the pump's gonna be. So for these fittings, they did supply us with 4 fittings, L fittings that look just like this. So these are gonna thread into the ends, and then our actual radiator hose or coolant hose is gonna hook up to here. So to hook these up, just using our Teflon tape and just wrap a nice even layer around all the threads. And once both of them are complete, just thread it into the hole until it's at the desired position that we want on both of them. Pretty simple stuff, right? Now, for the drain part that we see here, you'll see it just comes with a plug on it. Now, we could just leave that plug in there and not have to worry about it, but because this tank is mounted inside the van, and we do want it to be maintainable, I've bought a boiler valve that looks like this, that's just gonna thread into the end of there, so this way I'll be able to hook a hose onto it and open it up. So if I ever wanted to drain it, I can run that straight out of the van instead of draining inside the van. Now, one of my other questions I got asked is, could this be mounted outside of the van? The answer is yes, it definitely could. If you're running glycol in here, you would never have to worry about it freezing. But if it is cold outside, and this is outside, it's gonna be exposed to those elements, which means you're gonna have to use that much power and or diesel to keep it warm and get it warm so you have hot air and hot water inside your van. So for me, I'm gonna mount this inside the van because as long as it's all hooked up properly and there's no leaks, there's no safety concern at all. So with this boiler valve, we're just gonna wrap the end of this with tape just like we did the other fittings and thread it into the drain hole. And with that complete, this is now ready to install inside a ROAMR. So let's show you where we're putting it. Now I will say, the mounting of this tank is actually very simple. It already has the brackets welded to it, and it's just 4 screws to screw through into whatever you're going into. But for our setup, I want our tank to mount to the back wall and still be strong enough. Now as you know, we did put this 3/8 sheeting over all of our walls, but just because of the weight that this tank might have and vibrations, taking a 2x10 piece of wood that I did put brackets onto so we can mount it to the framing, as well as just put a thin piece of rubber between it just to stop the thermal transfer from going through. And with this setup, it's literally as easy as putting it in place, finding where you want it, and put your 4 screws in. We now have a hot water expansion tank installed inside a ROAMR. It's solid. Now one thing to note, because this is an expansion tank, just like your radiator, it does have a vent hose coming off the end of it, and this does need to vent. And the Rixson kit does not address this at all. It doesn't give you a hose for it, doesn't even talk about the venting in the instructions. So we had to come up with a custom solution. So what I did is I went on Amazon, I went and bought one of these coolant overflow reservoir tanks. As you can see on the side, you guys probably can't read that, but it does have the low and the fill, all that kind of stuff like you do, just like underneath the hood of your car for your coolant. Then we just bought some heater hose, which is 5/16, and it'll just plug right into the end of our tank, as well as plug right into our reservoir tank. And then we'll just screw it in right below the expansion tank, and we now have an easy way to access what that fluid level is and be able to add fluid if need be. And there we go. Now we have an overflow tank for our reservoir that's easily accessible to do top-ups or check fluid levels. Pretty sweet, right? Next. The next piece we're installing is really simple. So this is the 12-volt pump that comes with the system. So you'll see it just has a positive and negative wire, very simple. And also has an arrow pointing that way, meaning out of the reservoir, it goes down into the pump, and it comes out this way. It also comes with its own little simple bracket that just wraps around the pump. Then you screw it into place. So the pump being so straightforward, only thing I have to worry about is on the back side, it does have a little dial for the flow control. Other than that, we're just gonna let it hang just like that. And one thing about any pump, you do not want it resting up against a hard surface as the pump, because when they pump, they move, and if it's mounted touching anything, it will vibrate like crazy. But that was easy. On to the next step. And now with our reservoir and our pump installed, we're now ready to start installing the pieces that give us heat. So the first thing we're going to start with is the heat exchangers, which is what gives us our hot water inside the van. So if you bought the kit, it'll only come with one heat exchanger because typically you can run your coolant through and just tee your water lines in to do them both at the same time through the same heat exchanger. No problem at all. But with the way I'm setting up my van, which I'll go in more detail later on in our build, so hit that subscribe and hit that notification bell so you're reminded. But we're gonna have filtered drinking water and then we're gonna have non-filtered shower water. And if I ran them both through the same thing, well, there'd be no point in filtering the drinking water at that point, right? Right. So with that being said, these L brackets that we spoke about when we did the tank, they only send you 4 of them, and it would have been fine if we only had 1 heat exchanger. But because we have 2, we had to buy some of our own fittings that fit in there. The other part is we had to buy some 3/4 inch threaded with 1/2 inch barb on the end, and these are going to be for our water lines that go onto the other end of our heat exchangers. So these, very simply, once again, we're just going to tape up our ends like we did our other fittings and then install them into our heat exchangers. So to install these, you're going to have coolant on one side, water on the other side. So you can go in, across, heat the plates that are inside there, come back out, go to your next heat exchanger or wherever it's going. On this side, you're gonna have your water, and if you have your coolant coming this way, you're gonna want your water coming cold this way and go back out hot that way. Because this works through thermal heat transfer, it works better if the flows go in opposite direction. It probably will work the other way, but it's recommended to go the opposite direction of flow. So we'll just thread these in to where we need them to be and tighten them down real good. And we now have them ready to install. So when installing them, what we'll talk about right here is that you cannot mount them flat, nor can you mount them on the side, because that'll create sediment deposits, which will end up making your heat exchangers fail. So it's highly recommended that they mount in the upright position like this here. It can go this way or that way, but it needs to be in the upright position. And for these heat exchangers, they do come with their own brackets, which just fit right over top of them, and we're ready to screw them into place right after these messages. And our heat exchanger will mount right up on top, above the pump. And there we go. Now our heat exchangers are both installed, and I did hook the 2 of them together with some heater hose, which I'll show you more later. But now it can come in here, up across to the other heat exchanger, back down and out. Pretty sweet, eh? And while I'm holding my phone for light, check this out. It is 11:59 on December 31st. You guys are about to ring in the new year with Dare's Drives, even if you are watching it a couple days later. Come on, it's gonna go in a second now, I guarantee ya. Here we go. Ready? Ready? Boom! 2021, baby! Yeah! And there it is, the end of 2020, beginning of 2021. Let's see what this one brings for us. I'm not one for resolutions or nothing like that. All I'm really hoping is that we can get this van done. So let's have a little cheers together. And once again, keep moving forward. I got a question for you though. What's your bet? Are we going to meet the aliens in 2021? Or are we just going to hear about the aliens in 2021? Let's start a poll. Tell me what you think below. And last but not least to be installed is the actual fan itself. So this requires no special pieces. Even the fittings on the back are solid mounted to it. You just press your hose over top of it, lock down the hose clamps, and it's just a 12-volt fan once again with a red and a black wire, positive, negative. And basically what happens is the coolant comes in one, goes back out the other, and it heats up a heat exchanger inside the fan unit itself. And when this blower turns on, it's gonna suck air in from this side, blow it through the heat exchanger, and blow hot air out this side into our van. Pretty straightforward. It's got mounting holes all over it, and I'm only gonna use these 4 that are on the base here, and I'll show you where that's going right now. So for the fan unit, we want it to sit towards the front of our cabinet, obviously, so it's able to blow its air straight out into the hallway and disperse at about the halfway point of the van. So to use these bolt holes that we're talking about on the other side of the fan, I've taken a 2x4 piece of wood to lay it down in here. I've added some PL Premium construction adhesive to the bottom side of our piece of wood, adhered it down to the floor, put some weight on it, and waited for 24 hours. And once that's all set, you will see now that our fan can sit perfectly level on top of our wood and our aluminum framing here. See? But the problem we have is that these front bolts here, you'll see, line up with the aluminum framing. Now obviously we're not going to be able to put a screw down through there. So I've gone and cut ourselves a piece of 3/8 plywood that'll fit into there perfectly. And we put it down on top now. You'll see that'll give us a spot to bolt everything in down through right where the framing is even. So this time I'm going to add some construction adhesive to the aluminum frame. And then we'll set our wood down on top and just make sure it lines up perfectly with the face of our aluminum, and just drop some screws down through into where the wood is underneath. And now we're ready to install the fan. And these front bolts will go down through the wood holding it in place, and we'll go through that center groove where the aluminum is so it can fit all the way down through. Pretty simple stuff once again. And now we have our fan in, which is nice and solid, not going nowhere. Now one thing I did do, these flanges, you'll see, used to come right to the edge of this, and I did want, as you'll notice, it to protrude just a little bit, so when we put our facing on, it comes out to the edge. So I bought a new tool, which is an oscillating tool. You can put metal or wood bits or anything like that on it, and it just kind of goes like that. The coolest tool ever. I wish I had this a long time ago. If you're doing a van build, make sure you get one of these things. So now you'll see with them trimmed, it fits perfectly. And we're now ready to plumb the unit. We're gonna need some heater hose, some hose clamps, and some fittings. But the problem with the kit is it only comes with 4 of these type of hoses you see here. We already used 2 of them underneath the van where we mounted the heater in. It also does not come with enough hose clamps, nor does it come with any spare 90 or straight hose fittings to mount all this together. So we had to purchase more 3/4 inch hose clamps, as well as some 3/4 inch barbed 90-degree fittings. And we purchased a roll of 3/4 inch red heater hose, but I'm going to keep this part of the install pretty straightforward and simple. So I'll show you a map right here that shows you how it should all be plumbed. So if you're planning this, screenshot it now, and you now have it for your records forever. Oh, also, and to cut this hose, I bought this little hose cutter thing. It's basically just a razor blade on like a scissor handle. And now, when you cut, you just light pressure and spin it around. It makes an absolutely perfect cut every single time. Highly recommend this. So our first hose is going to come from the out port underneath the expansion tank. And we're going to run it straight across from the tank to the pump. Then we're going to go from the pump down into the floor, which is our heater unit. Then it comes back up from our floor into our first heat exchanger. Then it's going to go up, across, back down, and then we're going to run our next hose out of here all the way to where the heater is. Now the important part of this right here is that you do go to the heat exchanger first, because the fan runs off blowing cool air through the exchanger to create hot air. It will cool your coolant down. So if you run into the fan first, your water won't get as hot. Then it goes from the heater back into the coolant reservoir and starts its life all over again. And as luck would have it, we're short exactly 1 hose clamp from completing the job, which means we can't fire it up for you guys. In all honesty, I wouldn't be able to start it for you anyways because, well, we still have a rat's nest of wires to go through, and I'm pretty sure we've well gone over our 15 minutes together today. I'm only one person, and the one helper I do have never seems to leave the shop.
Are you happy you made it into the shelter? Are you happy you made it to work today? Yeah? I wish you did some shoveling because I did all the work today. I did the recording, I did the shoveling, I did it all. Yes, me. What do you want? You probably just want a treat, don't you? Oh, you're so cute. Yes, you are. You're so cute.
But my friends, that is the plumbing to our heating system. What'd you think? Did you learn something? Was it helpful? Comment below, let me know. And if you've made it this far, you haven't subscribed yet, maybe consider doing so. No pressure, of course, you do you, but it is completely free. It really does mean the world to me. If you have subscribed, thank you, thank you, thank you. Maybe consider hitting that notification bell. But with that being said, another project complete, another video in the books, and we are moving forward, my friends. So, see you on the next video.
Perfect.